Hey, it's Jason. Check this out. This is a 3D printer. It's made by Elegoo. It's the Neptune 2. And this is considered a budget printer. It prices in right about $200. But I will tell you, I was very surprised already on what you actually get for $200. And I'll go over that in a second. So first thing I noticed when I unpackaged everything and I laid it all on the table, how well it was put together. As far as the base is already assembled, and with the build plate already installed. And everything is already set up there. The components that still need to be installed are the uprights and trolley mechanism and the print head. Those all have to be attached, but like all the wiring has to be connected. But it's really plug and play. Very friendly, like even beginner friendly. It's just kind of all laid out there. Very detailed instructions. There's instructions online. You can go and watch tutorials about how to put every little component together. I'll go over a couple of tricks that I noticed that I didn't catch in some of the videos and things that might help you put it together if you decide that this is the one for you. But again, everything is laid out really well. It's just basic assembly, so if you're just familiar with putting things together, such as like IKEA items, things like that, this really shouldn't give you any too much trouble. Like I said, instructions are very clear, very step-by-step. There's a couple of key spots where you have to be very careful when installing rollers onto tracks, because the tracks, like the way they're cut, because they're precise, they're very sharp. So you don't want to take the risk of damaging the wheels as you put them onto the track mechanism. Because if you damage the wheels, then you'll get wobble or you'll get bounce that will affect the way your print lays down. You want everything to be smooth. You want everything to be precise. And if you assemble this thing carefully, you maximize your chance of getting a really good print. So again, very straightforward. All right, so once everything is together and everything is tight, there is a leveling process for the build plate that is done using the touchscreen. As the print head makes its way around to each of the four corners, you level each point with the knobs underneath, and you put that print head right at the thickness of a plain piece of paper to where you can just slide the paper with light resistance. Once all the points are the same, you're good to go. So I happen to purchase filament before the printer arrived, so I put the spool wall on board and began the loading process. This part was actually a little tricky. If there's a bend in your filament, like from being on the roll, it can hang up in the filament sensor. Also where it enters the guide tube just behind the feed rollers. So straightening the filament end before feeding should help this part. One thing I noticed is that it begins printing by laying down a sacrificial line along the edge of the build plate. I think that's to clear everything that might be remaining in the nozzle or any air bubbles that collected as it dripped out. And then it also puts a perimeter that is just wider than the piece that it's actually going to print, or at least the footprint of the piece that it's going to print. Then it moves to the inside and continues to build the piece. It's probably so that you can tell whether it's going to adhere correctly. Maybe a way to monitor it as it's laying out. Because if it doesn't stick, then you'll know right away and you can cancel the print. That's kind of what I gather from it. So since this is the first time ever for me printing on a 3D printer, I wanted to create something from scratch using an app on my iPad Pro, which I detail in a follow-up video. So I created a basic piece with some curves and some cutouts and some through holes like for bolts, more as a sample for me to be able to see how well it was going to print and the detail that I would get. There's no actual purpose for this part other than to show me what the printer can do. So once I made this particular one on my iPad, and once I got that transferred to the slicing software, I was able to put that onto the little flash drive that they give you, and I was able to print this out. So I was kind of amazed at how this thing worked. It was really, really quiet as it began doing its thing, and the loudest part is the fan, and even that's not that loud. Like I couldn't really hear it from the next room, so I was really pleased with that. So very smooth action as everything moves, just kind of cool to watch. It does let you know ahead of time in the slicer program just about how long each print will take, and prints can take a couple of hours, upwards of 24 hours, depending on the size or the infill setting. So the machine will run with multiple types of filament. You just have to check to see which ones are compatible and adjust the settings, which I have to get familiar with. But again, for my first printer, I'm extremely happy with the progress so far. I've actually started some other projects, which I should have posted, and there will be links to those. I can tell based on this part, even though you see some little print lines, and I think overall it gave me a good quality print here and a very good investment for $200. So in conjunction with the program I'm going to use, I plan to build some prototypes and things of that nature. And I think this machine has enough detail to cover all of that. So I never really had the means before to produce these kind of little prototypes before. So what I've discovered is that 3D printing really opens up an opportunity for people with ideas, and it's become an inexpensive way of rapid prototyping. So full disclosure, Elegoo did not sponsor any of this, but based on my research, I just happened to think this was the best one at the price point. So that's what I did. I highly recommend getting this printer. And if you guys are interested in this particular printer, I will leave a link in the description below. And keep in mind that if you do happen to purchase from there, you will be supporting this channel. So if you like this video, then I've done my job. And as always, I thank you for your time.